The night was broken by fire. A thin scream pierced through the luxury-lined streets of Crestwood City, a neighborhood where marble mansions stood like palaces and silence was wealth's unspoken anthem. Flames clawed at the side of a grand villa, the residence of Raymond Steele, a billionaire whose name was etched across magazines, business journals, and headlines of power. But tonight, all the billions in the world could not buy him what he feared losing most: his only daughter, Emily. The fire had started too quickly. Some said it was an electrical fault, others whispered sabotage, but in the chaos of that moment nothing mattered. The security guards had scrambled, the butler dialed emergency services, and neighbors gathered with gasps and phones raised, but none dared to enter the blazing inferno. The mansion's second floor, Emily's room, was a prison of fire. Raymond, usually a man of unshaken composure, looked shattered. His trembling hands gripped the iron gates as the firemen, delayed by traffic, were still minutes away. Every second was a dagger. "Daddy," a faint cry came from the burning window. Emily's pale face appeared through the smoke. Raymond screamed her name, a sound torn from the deepest recesses of his soul. For once, the billionaire who had built empires with cold calculations and ruthless decisions was helpless. And then from the shadows across the street, a figure emerged, a boy ragged in clothes stitched from years of survival, barefoot on the freezing pavement. No one noticed him before because no one ever did. His hair was unkempt, his skin smeared with the dust of alleys and hunger. To Crestwood's residents he was invisible, just another homeless child blending into the forgotten corners of the city. But his eyes burned with something different, not fear, not hesitation, but a fire that mirrored the flames consuming the mansion. Without a word, the boy sprinted past the guards. "Stop him," one shouted, mistaking him for a thief, but he was too fast, too determined. Raymond barely registered the boy until he saw him vanish inside the flaming entrance. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Inside, smoke thickened, curling like serpents. The boy's chest burned with every breath, but he pressed forward, guided by the echo of Emily's screams. Furniture collapsed, chandeliers cracked, glass shattered, but none of it slowed him. His small frame slipped through gaps larger men could not dare. He found her, curled near the window, coughing, her nightgown scorched by sparks. Emily's eyes widened at the sight of him. Not a firefighter, not a guard, but a boy who looked her age yet carried the weight of 10 lifetimes. "Come on," he coughed, pulling her up. She staggered, weak, but his arm was steady. With strength no one expected, he wrapped her in a blanket he'd grabbed from the floor and guided her back through the labyrinth of fire. The ceiling groaned. Flames licked his arms, his hair singed, but he didn't stop. When they stumbled into the main hall, part of the roof collapsed. The boy shielded her with his own body, taking the brunt of falling debris. His shoulder tore open, pain screaming through him, but still he dragged her toward the exit. And then light. The doors burst open and out they came, collapsing onto the cold grass. Emily coughed violently, air finally filling her lungs. The boy collapsed beside her, chest heaving, eyes glazed with exhaustion. For a moment, the entire street was silent. The homeless boy had done what millionaires, guards, and bystanders could not. He had walked into fire for someone who was not his own. Raymond Steele rushed forward, tears spilling down his face as he pulled Emily into his arms. She clung to him, sobbing, but her hand pointed weakly toward the boy. "He saved me," she whispered. Raymond's eyes fell on the boy for the first time, not as a figure on the street, not as a shadow ignored, but as a savior. And in that moment, something shifted inside him. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Reporters who had arrived late began snapping photos, neighbors whispered in awe, and the boy lay there unconscious, unaware that his life had just collided with the man whose world was built on wealth, pride, and walls taller than castles. Raymond knelt, torn between gratitude and shock. Who was this boy? Where had he come from? And why, out of all people, had he risked everything for his daughter? The fire roared behind them, devouring the mansion like a hungry beast. But here, in the cool embrace of night, something greater than fire had been ignited. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, the once majestic steel mansion stood in ruins. The smell of smoke still lingered in the air, black scars of ash crawling up the marble walls. Reporters crowded outside the steel gates, drones buzzing overhead to capture images of tragedy. Inside the hospital wing of Crestwood Medical, Raymond Steele sat beside his daughter's bed. Emily was safe, bruised, coughing, but alive. His heart had never felt so fragile. Money, contracts, skyscrapers, none of it had mattered the night before. But the image of the boy haunted him. That ragged child who had dashed through flames with nothing but courage, where was he now? The butler entered, adjusting his tie nervously. "Sir, the boy, he's stable. He was treated for smoke inhalation and burns. They've placed him in the public ward." Raymond frowned. The public ward, why not here in private care? The butler hesitated. "He doesn't have an identity, no address, no guardian, no insurance. The hospital refused to." Raymond stood, his voice sharp. "He saved my daughter's life, bring him here now." When Raymond entered the public ward, his eyes softened despite himself. The boy lay on a cot, bandages wrapped around his arm and shoulder. His chest rose and fell slowly, his face pale from exhaustion. A nurse whispered, "He regained consciousness an hour ago." Raymond stepped closer. "What's your name, son?" The boy blinked, his dark eyes wary. "Noah." "Noah," Raymond repeated, tasting the simplicity of it. "Where do you live?" The boy looked away. "Nowhere." The billionaire's chest tightened. "Your parents?" Noah's silence was louder than any words. Finally he muttered, "Gone." Raymond nodded slowly, piecing fragments together. A homeless orphan, a boy no one noticed. Yet in the moment of fire he had been the only one with the courage to act. "Why did you run in?" Raymond asked quietly. Noah met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "Because she was screaming, and nobody else moved." The simplicity of the answer pierced Raymond's heart. Back at the steel residence, now a half-burnt shell, Raymond found himself restless. He had always dismissed street children as a problem for the city council, a blemish on society's image. But Noah was different. Emily refused to leave her father's side, but every time she spoke of the fire, her voice trembled with gratitude for Noah. "Daddy, he's brave, he didn't even know me, and he still came for me." Her words gnawed at him. In his business empire, Raymond had built walls, between rich and poor, between him and the world. But this boy had shattered those walls in one reckless, heroic act. Raymond began visiting Noah daily. At first the boy was guarded, his answers short, but slowly cracks of trust appeared. He learned Noah had been on the streets for years, surviving on scraps, sometimes sleeping near the train station, other times in abandoned buildings. He avoided gangs, begged when he had to, and stole only when hunger was unbearable. But what intrigued Raymond most was Noah's faith. One evening he found the boy whispering near the hospital window, eyes lifted to the sky. "What are you doing?" Raymond asked. "Talking," Noah replied simply. "To who?" "To her. Her. The lady who watches me," Noah said, pointing toward the stars. "She's been with me since my parents died. She said I'd have to walk through fire to find where I belong." Raymond stiffened. Mysticism was something he had no patience for. He was a man of numbers, contracts, logic, yet Noah's calm certainty unsettled him. Days later, Raymond decided to take Noah into his care temporarily. Emily was overjoyed, the boy hesitant. At a dinner in the Steele Estates guest house, Raymond pushed Noah to abandon his talk of the lady in the stars. "You don't need silly stories now," Raymond said firmly. "You need education, discipline, and opportunity. I can give you that. Leave these superstitions behind." Noah's eyes darkened. "It's not a story, she warned me about the fire." Raymond frowned. "Coincidence, you were lucky, that's all." "No," Noah whispered. "She said I'd have to choose, save someone or stay invisible, and I chose." Raymond slammed his glass down. "Enough, you're in my house now. You will not fill my daughter's head with fairy tales." Emily, sitting beside Noah, flinched. Tears pooled in Noah's eyes, but he said nothing more. That night, Raymond thought he had silenced the boy, but he hadn't. He had just planted the seed of a greater storm. A week later, Raymond hosted a lavish business gathering to assure investors the fire hadn't broken him. He dressed Noah in a suit, instructing him to stay silent. But during the event, Emily collapsed suddenly, her face pale, her breath shallow. Panic erupted. Doctors rushed in, baffled. "She's stable physically," one said, "but something unseen is draining her." Noah's voice trembled as he whispered, "She warned me this would happen if you mocked her, the lady in the stars. She said your pride would cost you." Raymond snapped, furious. "This is nonsense." But as the doctors struggled, a chill spread across the hall, lights flickering. Guests gasped. Something unseen pressed heavily in the air. For the first time in his life, Raymond felt powerless, not to money, not to rivals. but to something beyond comprehension. He fell to his knees beside his daughter, clutching her hand. "What do I do?" he